everyone, Amy here, presenter and producer of the Eerie Excursion podcast, the podcast that takes a left turn into the shadows to hear haunted and creepy tales from around the UK, as told by local tour guides and experts. Now, this week we're in Nottingham. As you can see here, it is in the heart of England. Now, it's a place most famous for the legend that is Robin Hood. But as I say in the episode, there's really so much more to Nottingham and its history than that. So here I actually had two guides. I had Simon and Jess, both from the original Nottingham Ghost Walk, who you can see the whole crew there in the picture. You can find them on Instagram. So just some quick history highlights from Nottingham. Charles I raised his standard here to essentially mark the beginning of the English Civil War. Spoiler alert, didn't end so well for Charles. The Luddite Revolution also started in Nottinghamshire. Now, Simon actually tells me in the episode that the city likes to riot and even had cheese riots as well. That's cheese. Is there anything more important in life? Who knows? Another key moment in history is a little bit of a gruesome one. And that is when King John captured 28 Welsh princes. Now, it's gruesome because the Welsh lords rose up again, and King John, known for his cruelty and was angry, obviously, at these Welsh lords rising up, he decided to have the 28 Welsh princes hung from the castle walls. Now, here is a clip from the episode about Simon telling us about it.
So he had each one of his soldiers take one of those Welsh princes, put a noose around the neck, and had them lowered over the castle walls right here where we're standing. And history has it that they hung there for quite a long time, so it would not have been a pleasant sight. Today, when you're walking along here, nobody actually sees this haunting. There are different ways of perceiving hauntings, and it depends on your particular psychic ability, if you will.
Now, this episode probably is one of the more gruesome ones in the series. There are a lot of stories about dead bodies and a lot of visceral reactions to ghosts. For example, in this haunting that you just heard Simon telling about, he has said that when he goes on his ghost walk, he's had people smell the rotting corpses. Obviously, they're not there now. We're talking about centuries ago. But having the smell because they hung there for quite some time. He's also had people in this particular one say that they feel like they can't breathe, that they're being choked, which I think is a very visceral reaction to that haunting. It's a really fascinating story, and there is so much more than what I've covered here in this little ramble that I've had. Now, I'm actually just going to back up just a little bit because the episode actually starts at Ye Old Trip to Jerusalem. So it's a pub, and here's the room that Simon, Jess, and I sat in to talk about the hauntings in the pub, and there are a lot of them. So from things moving around the bar to cursed/haunted objects. Now, one of these objects isn't so bad. It's this picture here, that is the pregnancy chair. Named so because whoever sits on the chair will find themselves with child within about a year, I think. Usually it's pretty quick. Simon tells a story about when somebody sat on it and within 3 months later, their wife was pregnant with their child, obviously. Now to the next object is much darker, and it's the cursed galleon. As you can see, it's in a protective case for a reason, and that's because anybody who touches it will meet their maker within a year, as it were. So yeah, that's a pretty interesting thing, and like I said, in the glass case to protect us all. Anyway, let's move away from the pub to another great place for a spooky podcast to take place in. the graveyard. Now, I wanted to highlight this one as well because it's where the podcast sound gets really swept up in the wind. And it was really hard for me to edit. I am a one-man band. I'm not the BBC. I'm not, a big production company where I can shut down a whole street. So and come back to filming. So I do apologize for the wind noise in this one, but I kind of think it adds to the spooky atmosphere as well. We were standing in the middle of this graveyard. To be fair, there are people around, so it wasn't that scary, at least for me. But there was really good atmosphere. I really hope it didn't blow anybody's eardrums when you're listening to it. Anyway, Just takes the lead with the story here. So the story takes place in the Georgian era when the city was looking to expand. And so in this area where the graveyard was, they were basically it's where they had their medieval plague pits. So in order to build on that land, the workers in the Georgian era were basically digging up all of these graves. Such gruesome stuff. I know I did warn you before. But there was one particularly horrifying uncovering, and that was of a lead coffin grave. Now, a lead coffin almost definitely would have signaled that it was somebody wealthy. And that's why the Georgian diggers wanted to dig them up. So here's Jess with a story about that.
There were way fewer, I imagine there were way fewer riches than they thought, because they'd have to delve through all this like coffin gravy. But the most interesting thing they found in that coffin would not be riches, or anything exciting. What they discovered when they opened this coffin, and they found that on the inside of the lid, there was some very long, dedicated scratch marks down the length of the lid, suggesting that this person may well have been buried, seemingly, possibly in a death-like coma.
So if I'm honest with you, stories of people being buried alive are the stories I genuinely find the scariest. So that's why I wanted to highlight that clip here in this video, because I just think it's the worst way to go, being buried alive. Anyway, so that's my Nottingham highlights. I did forget to say that you would have noticed in that last clip, there's an animation. So this was the first episode where I had a really talented student from Salford University called Hannah draw up some animation for me for the YouTube version of the podcast. And I just thought it was really cool. And definitely worth checking out the episode, not just for the stories, but for her animation too. She is also on Instagram, and I put a link to her work in the bio of the episode. And yeah, make sure you subscribe so you don't miss an eerie adventure. See you next time, guys.